Empty Epsilon scenario writing, Kraylor stream. Looking at the update function, there's a lot of code in there. When it gets like this, I like to break some of those things out into their own function. So I'm going to take that if then else block that I just copied that handles transports, and I'm going to put it into a function called maintain transports. Then I will copy the name of the function and I'll put it in update. That way it still gets executed, it just gets executed in its own function. After that, we will create a function called bug the player. Guess what? We're going to bug the player with a bunch of Kraylor. Well, it's circumstantial. If we just put too much out there, then that overwhelms and it's no longer fun. So we will set up the conditions where we will get more Kraylor spawned. The first thing we want to do is we want to maintain the enemy ships list. We haven't done that so far. We put stuff in, but we never took anything out. What we want to happen is to delete the ships that get destroyed. So I'm going to set up a Boolean that says clean list. It'll start off as true. We will set up a loop. I is the index. Ship is the item in the list. In I pairs is the integer pairs. The name of the list is enemy ships. And then we'll do for every ship, if it's nil or if it's not valid, then we're going to do that special table remove function that applies to integer lists. Enemy ships and the index is I. We're going to set our Boolean clean list to false, and then we will break out of the loop. After the loop, it is time to check to see if we need to put more Kraylor out there. So the first thing we do is say if we have a clean list and the number of items in the enemy ships is less than 1, which is 0, which means that the player has destroyed all of the enemy ships, then we're going to check a timer. Now, the timer doesn't exist yet, but we're going to check. If it's equal to nil, that means it hasn't been created. And so we're going to create it, and we're going to set it to 3 seconds in the future. Now, that's going to be the default for testing. When we get done testing, we'll set it to 2 minutes. It's about right before you spawn more ships. Once we have the timer, then we can check the timer. We'll say if the time on the clock, which is getScenarioTime, is greater than the variable that we set up called bug time. If it's greater than, that means that the time has expired. The player has had enough of a respite. It is now time to send them some more Kraylor. So the first thing we do is reset our timer so that we can use it again in the future. We're going to create a local variable called bug count, and we're going to use a function called math.random to generate a random set of integers. The previous random functions that we've used, they yield things other than integers. We want an integer this time. So we're going to create a loop to go through that many times, and in the loop we're going to set a new in the loop we're going to get a new set of coordinates using vectorFromAngle. The angle that we set up is going to be essentially 360 divided by however many Kraylor we're spawning, which is bug count, times the current index, which is I. That will give us a nice circle of enemies coming out of the station. That true parameter that we have on the end, well, the second parameter is how far away from the station. The true parameter essentially makes the 0 to 360 match the 0 to 360 that is in a standard ship heading. Then we're going to create an enemy. That's what CPU ship is. We're going to set a template. We use our string.format. We'll start off with adder mark, and the number is again going to be a set of integers. In the Starfighter's Lua, we have adder mark 3 through 9, so that's what those integers are. So we can pick out one of those at random. We're going to set our position based on the enemy station coordinates plus the coordinates that we just calculated based on vectorFromAngle, based on the value in the loop. So that's what this code is doing: enemy station x plus bug x and enemy station y plus bug y. That will put the ships around the station. The next thing we want to do is set the heading of those ships to follow the angle that we just used. So I'm copying this formula and putting it down here. That sets the ship flying in that direction. Order roaming, so they just go around and shoot stuff. And we will take the ship that we just created and insert it in our enemy ships list. Now, the list will grow and shrink based on when the enemies get spawned and when they get destroyed. Let's go test this out and see what happens. So start server, development, intro. We'll default to a normal scenario. We'll take a standard player ship. The default is Atlantis because it's the first in the list. We will start the simulation, and we will delete enemies because we want to see what happens when we delete enemies. So we delete those. Let's zoom in to our enemy station and check for spawning Kraylor after 3 seconds. It's been 3 seconds. Oh, I'll look at the console. There's an error. So it says the limit must be a number on line 168. Line 160. Oh, I misspelled bug count. I called it big count. Okay, so we fixed that. Let's go save it and run it again and see what happens. Last video, I mentioned that testing is important. It is important. It's real easy to make a mistake, and you just want to find those sooner rather than later. All right, once again, we're going to start the simulation. Let's delete the enemy ships and see if we can get them to spawn after 3 seconds from the enemy station. Zoom in so we can see them better. Oh, I have another error. Looks like I have a bad variable name. Instead of bug count, I got butt count. So, yeah, in line 169, there it is. There's butt count. That should be bug count. And guess what? This is the formula that I copied below. So I got to correct it in 2 places. So we'll correct that, and let's save, and we'll test again. Test again. Must do testing, test again. That should be your mantra. You know, you could add a beat to that, make a song out of it. Or not. All right, testing again. We launched the simulation. We're deleting the enemies, and we want to see those enemies spawn from the enemy station. Okay, it's deleted 3 seconds later. What do we get? What do we get? What? We have another error? We have another error. It says the nil value method set template. I can't find the template. There was no template for the CPU ship. Oh, I see it. I misspelled the function name set template. There's no L. I need to put an L in there. So we put an L in there, and I hope that this time it will work fine. Saving, testing, here we go again. So development, intro, default, level, there's a player ship. We start the simulation. We delete the enemies as if we had shot them down. There's our enemy station. Well, you do get to see that the enemy station does get randomized all over the place like we did last video. And there they are. Ding, 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 ding. We have an Adder Mark 6. We have another Adder Mark 6. We have yet another Adder Mark 6. And we have an Adder Mark 4. So we know that we're getting random types of adders, even though we got 3 of the same kind. We're going to delete them all. And 3 seconds later, yes, we have a bunch of adders. Success. This is what I call success.